Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Shelly Scott, and like Cody said, I work at Intuit. I've been at Intuit for about 6 years. Before coming to the company, I worked in Nairobi, Kenya, and socially responsible private equity. And the firm I worked for, we were focused on getting growth capital to small and medium enterprises in East Africa. Through that experience, I really saw firsthand how small businesses are truly the backbone of obviously not only the United States, but especially in global markets, especially in developing and underdeveloped economies. So when I came back to America, I looked at the companies that I could potentially work at, and I saw Intuit as being a mission-driven company focused on making small businesses, consumers, and accountants successful, and that really resonated with me. My team at Intuit, I work in business development and partner management. We focus on bringing best practices from the external world into the company, and we also focus on partnerships that accelerate our product roadmap or expand our ecosystem. Now, my friend and colleague Jared over here has been at the company much, much longer. Jared, how long have you been here?
You're going to make a joke about how old I am now? So I've been with Intuit for over 16 years. I started with a company called apps.com. We was one of the founding members in Boston, and Intuit acquired us about 16 years ago, and that's how I came to work at Intuit. So now I lead up the engineering team for developer relations, and I've been working with developers and trying to make them successful for the past 15, 16 years. So I'm completely developer focused, and that's why I'm here today to talk to you guys about exactly how we can make rock stars out of some of these developers in our huge ecosystem.
That's right. So if any of you have ever gone to apps.com or maybe have a published integration on apps.com, that is courtesy of Jared's company that Intuit acquired many, many years ago. So before we get to sort of the meat of the discussion, which I hate that I said that because I am vegetarian, we want to give you some background on Intuit itself, because we feel like this background is relevant to sort of set the stage for our journey and finding these diamonds in the rough. So if Intuit was a person, we would very much be a millennial. So we were founded in the early 1980s. Many of you have probably heard the story of Scott Cook, our founder, sitting at the kitchen table with his wife, watching her balance the checkbook and thinking there has to be a better way to do financial management. And so he started a software, him and a couple other people, started a software called Quicken. And by the mid-1990s, when Artie the Aardvark was probably the best computer game, and I was playing Oregon Trail like nobody's business, we had TurboTax Online as one of our products. And then it was in 2001, so 17 years ago, that we started our developer ecosystem.
Right, exactly. And no coincidence, when the stock price starts to go up, that's when I came to Intuit. But it's also when we started the Intuit Developer Network. So you can see kind of in the orange here, you can see the progression of how our platform's changed over time. And developers have been a core component of that success. And that's why, every day when I go to work, it's just about trying to make developers successful on our platform.
Today, we are reporting developer benefit metrics to our CEO. So it's really a cornerstone of many of the metrics that we track in terms of our company's success.
I can click it. So we kind of gave you a little bit of an overview of exactly where we've come from, and now we're talking about finding a rock star in the ecosystem. So what does that actually mean? Like, how big are we talking? So this is what our QuickBooks Online ecosystem looked like 2 years ago. We had about 625,000 businesses running on QuickBooks Online. About 20,000 of those were connecting to third-party applications. We had about 2.5 developers just building for QBO, QuickBooks Online only, and then about 70 of those were available through our App Store. Now, this was 2 years ago. Fast forward to today. So it's been a relatively huge growth. So now QuickBooks Online has 1.8 million small businesses running their business on it across the world. We just announced, excuse me, we just announced 100,000 subscriptions in the UK alone. So 350,000 of those small businesses are connected to applications today, third-party applications, and we have about 1,500 active applications on the platform, totaling about 25,000 developers actively building. So, and then 460 of those are available through our App Store, which is available in product or through apps.com. So you can see that, what does that translate to? it translates to 10x growth in the ecosystem in 2 years. So when we talk about actually how to find a rock star in that, it's this growth where we are trying to narrow in on and find the best applications built by our developers.
That's right. And I think just to echo what Jared said, when you've got 25,000 developers actively building something within your ecosystem, and as a company, we want to make these developers successful. We want to find developers that we can potentially double their revenue or double their customer base. Whatever success is to that developer, we need to identify who they are. But it's not as simple as that, right? I would have a hard time thinking of a single developer that would say, no, I don't want to double my revenue. So we had to really look, and Jared and I and a couple other folks created a framework where we said, okay, let's first go out and let's talk to our customers, let's talk to our product management and XD communities, and figure out what is the customer benefits that really matter to them, and where are they actually looking to partner versus build something. And we'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. And then we looked at, okay, what's the data to inform the decision? So I've been in a lot of conversations at this summit, as well as the one in New York 2 years ago, where just kind of spontaneous talk about re-decisioning in our companies, particularly when it comes to partners, and how it can be challenging to get a decision to stick over time. And so really using data to inform that continuous alignment in the company. And then thirdly, rapid experiments. And so getting data through rapid experimentation and really using that data to validate hypothesis and to validate any sort of growth that you could create for that developer. Okay, so first thing, and we hope that that's what you guys take away, is like things that you can go do today or tomorrow or whenever you get back to the office to figure out who are these rockstar developers that might be in your ecosystem, aka the diamonds in the rough. All right, first thing is product managers, XD. These guys and gals are living and breathing customers every day. They know their product roadmaps, they know their priorities, they know the dependencies much better than I could on the partnerships team. And so we went out and we talked with these guys and gals across the organization and really overlaid what are all of the needs that they have, where are their roadmaps needing acceleration that we could use a developer to enable that acceleration, and really getting clear on the customer benefit. So these guys behind me, these two guys are Johnny and Herbert. They run a company called Phase Apparel. And Phase Apparel is super cool. If you guys go check them out, I'm sure they would love some new customers. They want to be designing apparel and selling it to customers. They want to be spending Saturday morning at their son's baseball game. They want to be making smarter business decisions for their company. What they don't want to be doing is doing back office stuff that's taking them away from money-making activities in their work or activities that they could be spending with their families. And so we really got obsessed with our customer base. And a couple of numbers that I just love to think about every day when I go to work is if we as a community, both Intuit and our developers, could improve the profit margins of these small businesses by 2.5%. It's not that much. The total impact on the commerce is $300 billion in a year. That's a ton of money. And so it's more jobs, it's more economic growth for everyone, and it ultimately creates more sustainable communities.
And just like you became customer obsessed, developers are my customers, so I am developer obsessed. So she talked a little bit about exactly how you figure out what those customer problems are. I'll talk a little bit about the data aspect of it. So how do you connect the dots? So you have very clear insights on what your small business customers want, what those problems are, and you have developers that are building solutions for them. How do you marry them together? So we started taking a look at our data to do that, and we came up with something called the AQI, which is the App Quality Index. And what that is 25, or more than 25 actually, but 25 plus individual metrics that are gathered from API data usage, error rates, churn rates, customer reviews, and it's all fed into an algorithm, and we get a rating for this application from 0 to 100. And when someone now comes to me and says, what's the best application to solve this particular problem, I can go look at the top apps based on that score, and that's just pure data. It's no opinion. It's no, I think these guys are really great, or the developers are telling you that they're doing this. We're actually looking at the data and understanding what APIs they're calling, what problems they're solving, what their customers are saying about them, and we're doing it with data. So we intentionally did this in an unscalable manner. Right? We just needed to learn how to do it first, and we really needed to learn how to make these developers successful. So we started off with just about 45 of our top apps, and we applied this to them. And that helped us form the basis of our framework.
Yeah, and one thing that I love about the concept of scoring an app or scoring an integration is that we were able to remove bias out of the algorithm. So naturally, when you're looking at data and you're trying to inform like some index score, right? A developer that might be on the platform for 5 years could very well score better than a developer that's been on the platform for 5 months, just because of the fact there's more data for the algorithm to work with. And so we spent a lot of time refining the algorithm so it would take that kind of time bias out of the system and we could get a fair score across the developers. The second thing that I really liked is this is data we already had. We didn't have to go out and get new accounts at another analytics company or anything like that. We put together the data we had in our dashboard in a way that other folks had never put it together before. And so it was something we were able to do pretty quickly and get alignment on very quickly within the organization.
Absolutely.
So we had the customer benefits overlapped with the score, and then we said, okay, well, all this is great. We think we know what we're doing, but what do our customers want? Intuit, we like to talk a lot about being a really big startup, and so some of you might have heard the idea of like 2 pizza teams, where our teams are small and fast, and we can be super entrepreneurial and get things to market quickly. And I think what we did here really demonstrates that. So I approached one engineer in our company, and I said, hey, here's the project we're working on. I need some access points inside of QuickBooks Online. And within a few days, I had them. And they hadn't been there before, which I thought was really, really cool that we were able to do that. We worked with marketing to put what is the customer benefit we think that these customers will want to get, and we measured interest from clicks. And so for me, I spent a lot of my time in financial models, as I'm sure many of you do. I see some smiles. And it was so good to have real data to put into those top-line assumptions. And then I could look at that and say, hey, if this data is true, and customers are telling us it's true, can I double this developer's revenue in 3 years, in 2 years? Can I double their customer base? And so it really served as a unique tool to flesh out some of the hypotheses we had.
Yeah, and let me give you an example of it just so you can kind of understand exactly how this would work out. Anyone familiar with a company called Fundbox? So they're a huge success story on our platform, and one of the things that we did with them is we put them in product at a point where a customer is looking at an invoice that they haven't been paid yet. So what Fundbox does is they will offer low interest financing against invoices that have yet to be paid. So they know full well you have the money, you just haven't been paid by that customer yet. So they can take a look at that data in QuickBooks and they can offer you a loan, low interest immediately, and your money will be delivered within 24 hours or 48 hours. And for a customer who's struggling to, for a small business struggling to make ends meet, at the time where you're looking at your invoice and saying, really, I wish this person would pay me, you can actually reach out to Fundbox, get that money delivered within 48 hours, and continue on with your business. So that's just a perfect example of where we looked at what the customer problem was. We figured out that this problem could be solved by this application, and then we put it in the right spot inside of QuickBooks Online in the right context. So just a great example of how we've made a customer successful just kind of with this framework. But the data and all the things that we've led to today have led us to kind of focus on 2 key areas. One of them is on bill payment, and the other is on timesheet management. So those are the 2 areas where we're kind of starting to focus on in the next kind of upcoming quarters for Intuit.
Yep. And through this exercise, one sort of I was surprised to find is as we were kind of overlaying all these customer problems against developers, there were customer problems that we're looking to solve where we do not have the right applications on our platform today. And so there was this opportunity kind of in front of us to go out and start doubling down on recruiting developers to come in and solve some of these key pain points for our customers that I didn't realize we didn't have the right developer until I took a step back and started mapping things across the board. So it was very interesting, kind of secondary work stream that came out of the project.
Yeah, and the AQI will tell us some of those pieces of information too. So how well is that problem being solved? And if it's not being solved very well by what we have on the platform today, we can reach out and recruit those developers to be on the platform.
Okay, so just to, we've said a lot, so just to synthesize everything. So 3 things that we did and we feel like potentially other folks could do is 1, just be super customer obsessed. When we deliver for customers, we deliver for the business. And when we enable developers like all of you to deliver for the customer, then we deliver for the business together. So starting at the customer first, by any means necessary.
The second is just using the data that you have and finding new ways to use that data. And in my opinion, you can never collect too much information. So what the apps are doing, your log information, the customer information that's being fed in, all of that information will help you get insights into how things are going.
Yep. And then finally, we just mentioned this, the rapid experimentation. I mean, I could not be more thrilled with how fast we experimented with these developer offerings and our product and how quickly we got information back. Like we'd push something out that morning and have data, 8 hours later that we could start playing with and using in the model. And then we could start taking that, the developer benefit we were sort of putting in the product and putting it in other places to understand, okay, if we go deeper with this developer, where are the access points where it's going to mean the most for their business? That we should be putting into our arrangement with this partner.
It's important to learn to fail fast. It's better to try out a few of these A/B tests, figure out which ones work during the test than it is to build an integration, roll it out, and then realize probably wasn't a good idea.
Yes. Okay, cool. So thank you, everyone, for listening. On the screen behind you, we have our company Twitter handles, our personal Twitter handles. We hope that you guys reach out. We're also hiring for both of our teams in the developer segment where Jared sits, as well as on the business development team, which is on my team. So if you guys have any questions around what we've talked about today related to the framework or related to working at the company or any questions at all, please can find us and we'll be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys. So we've got a little bit of time. If anybody has questions about the Intuit developer platform or the ecosystem and how that all works, now's your time to ask. Any questions out there? I'll run the mic to you. And by the way, if you do have a question, make sure that we get it into the mic, otherwise it won't make the video. A little detail I just learned. Any questions? Okay, great. 2 here.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'm sure a lot of your million-plus clients ask for and require a lot of bespoke, unique wants, right, among the developer community. So how do you go about policing all of the different developers' nuances that may or may not benefit a user?
So there's a few different things that we do. A lot of it is we have the framework that we build, our APIs have guardrails built into them. So there are things that we make available as part of our APIs where we just don't let you do damage. So you can't do things that would be detrimental. You can't access certain pieces of private information unless you have specific authorization from Intuit or from the customer. Then there's the aspect of actual monitoring. So we actively monitor all the APIs that are being called. We know exactly what's happening. We have a fraud team on 24/7. We have a performance team managing things 24/7. Anything that pops up gets flagged. Those apps can be quarantined. Our developer relations team can reach out to them to find out what's happening. And then lastly, any app that actually is on our app store or something that we promote, we actually put them through a pretty rigorous testing process before we ever allow them to get out in front of a customer, including a technical review and a full security review performed by a third-party security firm. So we have those guardrails in place. And then you're right, there are just some developers who are going to build something that's unique to them or just isn't appealing to small businesses. And that's part of being an open platform, right? You have to be able to allow people to build what they want to build and see if it takes off. So they can build things. If nobody likes it, it's part of the deal that comes with being an open platform. We do try and help them. We try and guide them in the right direction about what do our customers want, what kind of businesses should you be building for or targeting. But at the end of the day, it is an open platform, and you can build whatever you want on the platform. Did that answer your question?
We had another one back here.
Thanks, y'all. You mentioned the app health score, which I think is a super interesting idea. Can you talk about what some of the inputs are that contribute to that score and how you figured out which inputs were good versus ones that maybe just added to the noise?
Sure. So I worked on the... Yeah, it's a very long answer. So I worked on the algorithm, and I'll give you just a couple examples. So for one, we look at the API usage data, and we can actually tell if an application says, I'm reading and writing transactions, or I'm reading and writing expenses, or whatever. I can actually go and look and see, number one, how many API calls they made against a particular company on average. What were they reading and writing? Did it fail? Were there any, business logic errors when it happened? And I can apply that and say, all right, you're having these FCIs in Intuit speak. They're failed customer interactions. So you just tried to add an employee and it failed, right? That's not a good thing, right? So those error rates start showing up negatively for you. But when you then say, I'm adding expenses and we have a ratio of number of API calls we think you should be making against how many actual customers you have, if that falls in range, then your score is pretty good for the benefit you're delivering when you're talking about the actual API. Then we can take a look at error rates. So sometimes you make an API call and it says, hey, this customer exists already. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about where you passed in invalid information, you didn't validate information, and now you're getting some kind of an error back saying, sorry, we're not going to take that data. Those are the types of things where we start looking at how well did you really build this integration? Are you getting lots of these errors? How many of these errors are per unique company? If it happened for one company but not your other thousands of companies, it's not a big deal. But if we're seeing a unique error per company and we consider it to be a failed customer interaction, your score goes way down. Then we pull in data from a lot of different places. We know your click-through information through Omniture on the App Store. We know what customers are reviewing you. We know when you respond to a customer and say, hey, I'm really sorry about that. I'd love to make it up to you or talk to you or whatever. So we have a score for how well do you respond to your customers. Are people giving you negative reviews and are you responding to them? Or do you have 50 one-star reviews and you don't care? Like all that favors into it. And what Shelly was talking about before, just because you've been on the platform for a long time is irrelevant because all this gets refreshed on a weekly basis. And we can see how your performance happens over time. So I can see if you're getting better with API calls. I can see if your reviews are getting better. I can see if you're paying more attention to your customers over time. So really making sure that people are continuing to improve their integration, making sure they're taking care of their customers. So those are just a couple examples, but like I mentioned, there's well over 25 key data points, and they have weighting. Obviously certain things matter more than other things when it comes to that final algorithm. But if you have any questions about specifically what data, I'm happy to chat after.
That's great. Okay, one more. Here we go. You bet.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I work for a payments company and was naturally really interested in your comment, Shelly, about how a 2% increase in conversion will result in, you said 300 billion in processing for your clients. So from your perspective, when it comes to, did I get that stat right?
No.
Oh.
That's okay.
Speak into
Ask your question.
Speak into my shirt.
Okay. Well, it was some a small increase in conversion would lead to a big increase in payments volume. And was just wondering what you see as the biggest opportunity in payments for your users.
Okay, so it's 2.5% better profit margins per small business.
Okay.
Results in the 300 billion of new commerce. Okay. So it's not just processing volume. So if you guys have taken an economics course where you talk about the I forget exactly the right economic term it's called, but the way that the dollar multiplies, it goes into that. So it's total commerce that flows from generating that additional money within the economy.
It translates to $500 in profit per month for the small business. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but just that small amount is another $500 a month for the small business, which nationally translates to 300 billion, which is huge.